But first to the top story, and US President Donald Trump says Washington is now working closely with both Turkey and Saudi Arabia on the disappearance of exiled Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi. However, the American leader says he has no reason to cut off arms sales to Saudi Arabia. This as the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has now accepted a Saudi offer to forge a new joint working group to investigate the case fully. Shirley Sitbon has more.
Jamal Khashoggi has disappeared, but journalists want to keep him in the limelight. Like in this TV debate he was scheduled to attend. This other journalist, one of his friends, says Khashoggi wasn't concerned before returning to the Saudi consulate.
He had been to the consulate. They received him very well, although they were initially surprised to see him, and promised him if he came back again a few days later, they would issue him with the papers he was after. So he felt it was okay, but apparently they prepared a trap for him.
Turkish investigators have been waiting for days to search the consulate. According to the Washington Post, they assure having audio and video recordings proving the journalist was murdered inside. Governments across the world have pressed the Saudis to reveal what happened. The attitude taken by the U.S., an ally of the regime, is key. The State Department pushes the Saudi ambassador to give information.
It's my understanding that he is on his way back to Saudi Arabia. We have said to him that we expect information upon his return to the United States.
Donald Trump talks of taking measures to press the Saudis, but he's not willing to halt weapons deals just yet.
I would not be in favor of stopping a country from spending $110 billion, which is an all-time record, and letting Russia have that money and letting China have that money.
U.S. senators say they're ready to push further to get answers and could block new weapon deals before the year's end.
Joining me now from London is Andreas Krieg, a Professor of Defence Studies at King's College. Andreas, the image of the young Saudi Crown Prince, who was very much touted as a breath of fresh air when he assumed power, that certainly has taken a battering in the last few days over this disappearance of the journalist, hasn't it?
Absolutely. But to be honest, experts that know Saudi Arabia and the Gulf and who know Mohammed bin Salman and how he's come to power over the last 3 years said very early on already that this is actually just a propaganda war. He was, the Saudis invested tens of millions of dollars in Europe and in the United States to make him look like the new leader of the Middle East, a liberal reformer. Now, people who knew from the beginning were saying this is actually not true. If you look what's happening within Saudi Arabia, people are being detained, activists, dissidents, opposition figures, even people within the own family have disappeared. And now he's actually taking the next step and moving against people who are very vocal in criticizing the way that Saudi Arabia has becoming an even more robust, some people call it like a mobster state, since Mohammed bin Salman came to power. And he's taking action against anyone who's speaking out about it overseas. And I think the new dimension of what's happening now is that there is an individual who is not a dissident. Jamal was not a dissident. Jamal was someone who was writing as a journalist, but he was also very close to the Saudi circles, and taking him out, not just making him disappear, but as it seems, if you look at the evidence, make him possibly killing him, assassinating him in the consulate in Turkey. This is something that is a new dimension, and I think the world now is very well aware that the new Mohammed bin Salman and this new kingdom of Saudi Arabia under his leadership has become somewhat a rogue state. And I think the consequences will be quite dire for Saudi Arabia.
But having said that, Andreas, Washington still seems reluctant to cancel any arms deals with the Saudis. So what impact, if any, is going to have this controversy going to have on ties between these two countries?
No, I think this is going to have an impact on the US-Saudi relationship. But we have to understand one thing. The Trump administration has been quite adamant from the beginning, from the Riyadh summit last year in 2017, that they are not there to tell people how to lead their country. So it is a value-free foreign policy, which is based on interest. And I think that's what Donald Trump said yesterday or today, no, actually it was yesterday, when he was saying, you know, we can't do without the $110 billion worth of arms deals. It's very much interest-based. And we shouldn't forget that the entire Middle East strategy for the United States is built around an alliance between Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. They are the backbone of that strategy. So basically taking action against Mohammed bin Salman and Saudi Arabia would mean undermining the entire strategy that the United States have built since Trump came into power. So it's very much based on interest. However, the pressure is mounting. And I think we shouldn't forget that this is not only about getting the Trump administration on board, it's also getting businesses on board. And, you know, Mohammed bin Salman needs foreign investors. And if you see the comments that came out of Washington and the Silicon Valley over the last couple of hours or days, suggest that basically those people that are needed to rebuild the country and get the investments into Saudi Arabia are now pulling out. Those people that he was able to lure into coming into Saudi Arabia and helping build a new kingdom are now stepping away and saying, actually, we don't want to have anything to do with a rogue state that is killing its own dissidents, not only at home, but also overseas. And there have been a lot of other crises piling up here. And I think this is the key. The key is that people who are thinking that things are going to change in Saudi Arabia are now suddenly surprised that things are taking a turn for the worst.
And certainly the Turkish authorities have been very clear in saying that it was murder, and they're claiming they have video and audio tapes to prove it. They're saying, however, they're willing to work with the Saudis on an inquiry into the journalist's disappearance. But at the end of the day, Andreas, how do you think this will play out in the end?
Well, this is hard to say. I mean, yes, the Turkish authorities are saying they have audio and video material that actually clearly shows that Jamal was not only tortured but also killed within the consulate. The CCTV coverage suggests one thing. Jamal went into the consulate and never left. And we have this whole story about these 15 people coming from Saudi Arabia and then disappearing with boxes on 2 separate flights. So there are a lot of evidence there that the Saudis could answer for, but haven't answered. And when they did, they haven't really had any substantiated evidence for anything. The Turks are building a case now. They have evidence, but they are very careful in releasing it at this point. They want to have a very solid case that they then provide to intelligence services to the United States. And I do think that the Turks will use this as leverage to rebuild their own relationship with the Trump administration and showing that they are a partner to be relied upon, and possibly even a partner after Saudi Arabia, a partner that, you know, the United States could use in the Middle East, because America on their own can't exist within the Middle East. They need a partner on the ground. And I think the Erdogan government is now carefully building a case has actually killed one of their own and has taken this kind of very severe action. And then hopefully, you know, at least that's the hope in Ankara, you know, that they will be able to use this to mend relations with the Trump administration in Washington.
Andreas, at the end of the day, do you think we're ever going to know the true, full story of what happened to this Saudi journalist?
Probably not, because I don't believe that they do have recordings of what's happened inside the consulate. Tapping a consulate is very difficult. I think the Saudis knew that, and that's why everything happened behind closed doors, and it will always leave this shred of deniability there. But to be honest, you don't always need, if you look at how you build cases in court, the evidence that is there now is overwhelming. The fact that Jamal has not reappeared, you know, the boxes, the individuals that came in there. If you look at that evidence, there is a very strong case there for the world to see that Saudi Arabia was involved in this. But 100% proof of what happened inside is probably very difficult to produce.
Andreas Krug, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much.
Thank you.